Some signs aren't loud. They don't come crashing through your door or flooding your phone with apologies. But if you pay attention, really pay attention, you'll notice them in the silence, in the shift, in the space she used to fill, now echoing with the weight of your absence. Today, we're going to talk about the powerful signs that no contact is working, not just because she misses you, but because she's beginning to feel the regret she never expected to come. And if this showed up on your screen today, I don't think it's by accident. Maybe you're in this exact place right now, or maybe you're on your way there. Either way, take what you need, and if this speaks to you, like the video and subscribe to Stoic Station. Let's begin. 1. She doesn't know peace without you. In the beginning, your silence felt like a victory to her, like she had taken back control, like she had finally freed herself from whatever weight she imagined your presence carried. For a while, she even convinced herself that the quiet was power, her power. That letting go of you meant she could now breathe more freely, live more fully, move without explanation. But silence has a way of turning on those who misread it. What started as strength becomes a shadow. What once felt like freedom now echoes with absence. And when she looks around and realizes there's no more texts to skim, no more late-night calls to decline, no more emotional energy orbiting her, something shifts, slowly at first, quietly, until she finds herself asking a question she never thought she would. Why hasn't he checked in? She doesn't miss the attention. Not really. She misses the anchor, the presence, the steadiness you offered without ever demanding anything in return. She misses the way your calm settled her storms, even when she never thanked you for it. The way you brought peace into rooms she only knew as chaotic. And she realizes it too late, that while she was chasing excitement, what she actually needed was the one thing you gave so effortlessly: stillness. It's not just the man she regrets losing. It's the quiet confidence, the emotional safety, the feeling of being understood without having to be perfect. Because now, in your absence, the noise of her world is louder than ever, and she can't help but compare it to the silence you left behind. She doesn't regret losing you because you begged her to stay. She regrets it because you didn't. And in that, she discovered something she never expected to miss. The peace she never knew she needed until it was gone. 2. She tests the door. You don't open it. It never begins with a full apology. Not at first. It's always something small. A casual, "Hey, how have you been?" A photo she knows will remind you of a memory, a shared song that once made you both fall silent. She sends it not because she's ready to talk about everything, but because she wants to see if the door is still unlocked, if you're still there, waiting on the other side like you used to be. But this time, something has changed. You feel the message come in, and for a brief moment, the past brushes your chest. But instead of rushing to respond, you breathe. You don't react. You don't treat crumbs like closure, because you've learned something most men never do. Responding to breadcrumbs only teaches her that she can leave and still own a piece of you. You don't hate her. You're not playing games. But you no longer hand over your peace just because she's curious. And when she doesn't get the familiar chase, when your silence replaces what used to be instant comfort, it confuses her. Then it unnerves her, because you used to be the one who reached back the moment she knocked. You used to be the one who kept the door cracked open just in case. But now she sees the truth. You're no longer standing there. You've stepped back, not to punish, but to protect your energy. Not to create distance, but to create clarity. If she wants real connection, she'll have to come through the door fully, not just knock and run. Because if you truly want to know what your absence means to someone, you have to take it away, without warning, without explanation, and let the silence speak. You'll learn more from what they do in that space than from anything they ever told you while you were still giving. The door is there, but this time it's locked from the inside, and your peace is guarding it. 3. Her regret isn't loud, but it's real. Not all regret comes crashing in with grand gestures or emotional breakdowns. Sometimes it tiptoes in, uninvited, unspoken, but unmistakably present. She won't send a long apology or pour her heart out in a midnight call. Instead, she lingers, quietly. She watches your stories but doesn't say a word. She likes a photo, then disappears again. She brings up your name in casual conversations with mutual friends, asking how you're doing in a tone that tries too hard to sound indifferent. She's not asking directly, but every move she makes is a question in disguise. Are you still thinking about me? Have you really moved on? Is the door still cracked open? Just a little? And deep down, she's hoping the answer is no. She's hoping you're still quietly waiting, still scanning the room for her face, still wondering what could have been. But what she finds instead unsettles her. You didn't fall apart. You didn't vanish. You didn't spiral into desperation or bitterness. You stayed grounded. You got back up, and slowly, without noise, without announcement, you rebuilt. That's what shakes her, not your silence, but what that silence has produced: strength, direction, clarity. The version of you she left behind doesn't exist anymore, and the man you've become is someone she can no longer predict, no longer control, no longer reach the way she once did. Her regret doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It lingers in the spaces where your presence used to fill the silence. And it deepens every time she realizes that what she expected was a broken man, and what she sees is a better one. 4. Her words turn to action. Finally. There was a time when everything she said felt like a delay. She didn't reject you outright, but she kept you waiting in limbo. It was always the same cycle. Work was too much. Her head wasn't in the right place. The timing just didn't feel right. You heard every version of "I'm not ready," and each one left you holding on to hope while she held on to space. Back then, her affection was vague, her intentions unclear, and your connection, though real, felt like it was always waiting for her to choose it fully. But something changed when you stopped standing still. When your energy was no longer revolving around her indecision and your silence became louder than your efforts, she started to feel the weight of what she'd been brushing off. And for the first time, she didn't just miss you. She missed the way your presence brought calm, not chaos. You weren't perfect, but you were steady. You didn't ask her to be more than she was, but you invited her to become more simply by being around you. Now she's here. Not to explain, not to justify, but to show up in a way she never did before. She's no longer offering empty promises or sentimental detours. She's offering what you asked for all along: clarity, effort, presence. Because now she understands what your absence cost her. Not just a partner, but someone who brought peace to places she didn't even realize were restless. You were never meant to chase love. You were meant to embody it. You are a blessing to the people who cross your path, not because you perform or prove, but because your presence heals more than it ever demands. And she sees that now, not through your words, but through the silence that revealed your worth. 5. She feels you slipping out of reach. There's a moment she never expected, when your silence doesn't feel like punishment, but peace. When you're no longer standing where she left you, waiting for her to return, explain, or change. You haven't said a word, you haven't made a scene, but something in the air has shifted, and she can feel it, not in what you say, but in what you no longer give. She checks your profile again. She wonders what you're doing, who you're becoming, and whether you're thinking about her at all. And slowly, it dawns on her. You're not. Not like before. Not in the way that kept her tethered to your energy even after she walked away. The longer you remain silent, the clearer it becomes. You're not bitter, but you're done. Not wounded, but wiser. Not waiting, but walking forward. She doesn't panic because she misses the daily contact. She panics because she senses something more threatening to her pride. You've evolved beyond the version of you who needed her validation. The man she once felt so certain would always be available is becoming someone she doesn't fully recognize and can't predict. You've stopped orbiting her indecision. You've started living in your own gravity, and that unsettles her more than she expected. This is what happens when you grant people radical freedom to stay or to go without protest. It forces them to see what they truly value, because someone who sees your worth won't need you to beg for recognition. You've stopped screaming your value, and in doing so, you've made it impossible to ignore. 6. The chase reverses, but you're not chasing closure. There comes a day, often when you least expect it, when she returns. Maybe it's a message that carries more weight than before. Maybe it's her standing in front of you, unannounced, without a plan, just overwhelmed by everything she thought she could outrun. She's not composed. She's not calculated. She's raw. Her voice cracks, her eyes swell, and the words spill out not as explanations, but as confessions. I don't know how to fix this, but I miss you, and I want to try. You listen, not to agree, not to fall back in, but because you've grown too much to meet this moment with anger. She's not coming back because you pushed. She's coming back because the silence you held, calmly and fully, reflected something she couldn't deny anymore. The man who once would have begged for a second chance has become the man who no longer needs one, and that's exactly what makes her want to come back. This isn't about perfection. It's not about who was more right or who held on longer. What breaks her isn't guilt. It's the realization that you were never trying to hurt her. You were trying to love her right, quietly, fully, honestly, and she didn't see it until your absence made her feel it everywhere. But now, the weight has shifted. She may be ready to try, she may be sincere, but you're no longer chasing closure. You've already found it, in the way you chose to let go with dignity, not desperation. And that's what real strength looks like. Because the Stoic truth still stands. It was never your job to convince someone to choose you. It was always your responsibility to choose peace, even when love comes knocking, even when the heart wants to answer. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is stand still and let the storm pass without opening the door. 7. You no longer need her to come back, and that's when she does. There's a strange and powerful shift that happens when you finally stop waiting. In the beginning, everything inside you wanted her return. Every part of you replayed what went wrong, wondering if there was still a way back. You clung to hope disguised as patience, to silence disguised as strategy. But over time, that silence became something else. It stopped being a space held for her and started becoming a home for you. And that's when everything changed. You didn't announce it. You didn't harden. You simply stopped living in reaction to her. The parts of you that once begged for her attention began building something she could no longer touch. Your self-respect, your clarity, your growth. And the truth is, growth doesn't always look like shouting from the mountaintops. Sometimes it looks like finally being able to sit in a room she used to fill and feel at peace. She feels it even before you say a word. The absence of need, the lack of pull, those things echo louder than any message you could send. Because now, you're no longer the man who chased. You're the man who reclaimed himself. And that version of you, that's the one she never saw coming. That's the one she never imagined she could lose. She may regret losing the man who once gave her everything, even when he was receiving nothing in return. But it's the man who no longer needs to give, who no longer seeks her to feel whole, that keeps her up at night. Because once a man begins to walk for himself, not to be followed, he becomes someone she can't lead, can't control, can't get back the way she used to. Now all the power is in your hands, not because you played a game, but because you finally stopped playing one. You chose to grow, and in doing so, you became the one thing she never expected, a man who doesn't need her to come back to feel complete. 8. Her world feels smaller without you in it. You were never just another man in her life. You were the quiet presence that steadied her when everything else felt unpredictable, when her emotions ran high, when the noise in her world became too much. You didn't try to control it. You simply stood there, calm, grounded, unwavering. You were the structure she didn't realize she leaned on, the peace she didn't know she craved. You gave her space without distance, presence without pressure, love without conditions. She may not have said it. She may not have even known how much she needed that kind of love until it was gone. But now, as the days stretch on without you in them, she begins to feel the difference. The men who try to take your place might be louder, flashier, more eager to impress, but none of them know how to hold space for her storms without trying to tame them. None of them know how to see her fully without making her feel exposed. And slowly, her world begins to shrink. Not because there aren't people around her, but because the one person who made it feel like home is no longer there. The options she once thought were exciting feel empty now. The freedom she claimed doesn't bring peace, it brings restlessness. Because it wasn't just the relationship she lost. It was the calm within it, the stability you created, the quiet strength that made even her worst days feel bearable. Without you, the world keeps spinning, but it feels off balance, unanchored, smaller. And no matter who stands beside her now, there's a part of her that knows nothing feels quite as safe as when you were near. 9. She regrets not valuing you sooner. She always thought there'd be more time to figure things out, time to test the waters of other options, time to see how far she could stretch the distance before you'd finally pull away. She assumed you'd still be there, waiting, wondering, hoping, because for a while you were, and that gave her the illusion that your presence was permanent, unconditional, unshakable. But what she never considered was the quiet danger in your stillness. That while you weren't reacting, you were reflecting. That every moment she spent hesitating, you were slowly remembering who you were before you started shrinking yourself just to fit into her indecision. She didn't realize that the man who once bent for her would one day stand tall again and not look back. Now the truth has caught up to her. She didn't lose you in the moment she walked away. She lost you in the moment you chose yourself. When you stopped chasing clarity from someone who couldn't give it. When you stopped proving your worth to someone who didn't know how to see it. When you finally stepped away, not in anger, but in dignity. That's what stings the most. Not that you disappeared, but that you did so with peace. That you let her go without punishment, without bitterness, and without looking over your shoulder. She thought she had time, but time ran out the second you realized you never needed to be chosen by someone who couldn't recognize your value in the first place. And now, as she stands on the outside of a life you've rebuilt without her, she sees it clearly. She didn't just lose a man, she lost the version of him who would have waited. Men, if there's one thing I want you to take from everything we've just covered, it's this. Your power never came from her choosing you. It came from the moment you stopped needing her to. You gave presence, peace, and patience to someone who didn't know how to value it at the time. And when she walked away, it wasn't your reaction that defined you. It was your restraint. You didn't chase. You didn't collapse. You chose stillness, and in doing so, you let your silence speak louder than begging ever could. She may come back. or she may only linger in the shadows of regret. Either way, that's no longer your concern, because the goal was never to make her suffer your absence. It was to finally understand your own worth in it. Let that be your clarity. You're not here to win someone back. You're here to win yourself back and never lose him again. Whatever brought you here, I truly believe it wasn't by accident. If this message spoke to where you are right now, pause, take a breath, reflect. And if it helped you, even a little, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to Stoic Station. There's so much more to come. I'm grateful you're here, and I'm really genuinely glad to be back.